Hello friends, welcome to the Southern Mountain Kitchen. Today we're making bourbon balls. So I'm sure many of you have heard of bourbon balls. This is one of those little treats that has a little bit of booze in it that you make for the holidays. And if Christmas was coming, my mother was making these because these seem to be the things she loved to make the most. She's kind of like a baker kind of person, but she loved her bourbon balls. So what you see on my counter is what we're going to use to make these. Mind you, with the exception of the fact you can change out your nuts for whatever you'd like to have in there. I have a mix of walnuts and pecans in this. You can add different things you want to use to it. You could go walnuts only or you could go pecans only. It's your choice. And I use vanilla wafers for this, but you can use other types of cookie to make this because it's kind of one of those recipes that changes by the person that's making it. And then other than that, you can roll these in powdered sugar when you're done, or you can dip them in chocolate, which I dip them in chocolate because that's the way they taste the best to me. It's your choice. If you want to use the powdered sugar or the chocolate, you go for whichever makes you happy. So otherwise, what you see on my counter is what we're going to use. So we're going to start off with a cup of powdered sugar. And then to this, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of unsweetened cocoa. And once we get this in here, we're going to mix it up because we want to mix the cocoa through the powdered sugar and get it distributed so that way it's kind of even throughout the whole mix. So keep stirring this, whisking it up until you get them completely mixed through. The thing about if there's like a lump here and there, that's okay. We're going to mix that out as we keep going in this. Now we're going to use about 1/4 of a cup of bourbon, and we're going to mix that with 2 tablespoons of light corn syrup. Now, if you don't like light corn syrup, you could substitute honey or something else for that in this mix. And I use one of the mini bottles of booze in this because that's basically 1/4 of a cup. So we're going to mix the syrup and the bourbon together and get them completely mixed up before we actually use them in anything because we want to give it time for the corn syrup to dissolve a little bit. So once you get them completely in your container, stir them up a bit, get them mixed. And as you stir this through, you're going to notice that it's going to get a lot easier to stir this after about like a few seconds because the corn syrup is going to break down into the bourbon. And once we get that completely done, we're going to move on to our next step. Now, as you can see in my container, I have my vanilla wafers in here, which basically there's about 40 wafers, which is about 2 cups of this crushed up. They don't have to be really fine. You can just crunch them to where they're very small. And then you're going to have your nuts. Now, you're going to need about a cup of nuts, whether you're using walnuts or whatever. Just go ahead and chop them up with a knife to where we want to get the pieces small enough. Because remember, we're making a small piece of candy. We're not making anything huge, so we want them cut into smaller pieces that it's easier for them to mix in. And actually, when you're actually rolling the candy up, it's not going to be big and bulky and make it distorted. So just keep cutting on these until you get them kind of chopped up into very small pieces. And I suggest just finding a decently sharp knife and just work your way over top your stack of the nuts continuously until they break down to the size that you think they should be. Now probably if you have a decent knife, you're going to go over these about 6-7 times until you get them chopped to where they should be the right size. And then afterwards, we're going to pull them to the side in a bowl to get ready to mix them into the other ingredients. So now that we have them mixed up, we're going to put the nuts into our original mix of the powdered sugar and the cocoa powder. Then we're going to add in our wafers. Now we're going to whisk this all together to make sure that all of the things we've just put in this bowl mix really well through, so that way there's not just a clump of this and that all over the place. Then we're going to add in the bourbon and the corn syrup. And you're going to mix this together, probably using something that's sturdy like a good spoon or a fork until you get it completely mixed through. And if you find it's a little dry, you can go ahead and add a little bit more corn syrup to it to make it wetter so it does stick together. Now, before you go to roll these, I suggest you put some powdered sugar in the palms of your hand, because when you're going to go to roll these, they're going to try to stick. So if you have the powdered sugar in there, you're good for rolling a few of these at a time until you get it completely pulled off your hand, and that way you have to reapply the powdered sugar. And then just work your way through the entire batch of the ingredients that we have until you get them all rolled up. And remember, we're not trying to make these huge. These are basically supposed to be kind of like, you bite a couple times into a candy and it's gone. So when you roll these up, you're going to get probably around like 31, 32 of these maybe. I don't know. I think I had 32 when I was done. But just remember, every few of these, put some more powdered sugar on your hand to roll again. And when they're all rolled up, they're going to end up going into the refrigerator for a good half an hour, so that way that they solid up a little bit to make them a little bit harder for when we go to dip them in chocolate, if you're doing that. Otherwise, if you're doing powdered sugar, you're fine. So I took about 5 blocks, and this is the stuff called almond bark that you find at the grocery store. And 5 blocks is enough to dip all of these in, because you really want to make sure that you chop this up thoroughly to get it into your bowl before we start to melt it. But 5 blocks will do all of the things that we're going to dip. You may have a little teeny tiny bit left over extra, but that's okay. It's no big deal. And just take a knife and carefully cut this into smaller pieces, because it'll melt faster for you and less chance of it burning in the microwave when you're doing it. You just want to put this in for about like 20 some seconds at a run, until you get it to a point where this is soft and it starts to melt down. You stir it up and it's ready to use. Now, what we're going to do with this is, once we get these all 5 blocks chopped up and into this container to put in the microwave, we're also going to add to it about a tablespoon of some coconut oil, because that's going to help your candy have a shinier look to the outside, a little better consistency, and it'll just be a little bit better to look at when it's done. And it's a better thing to do. Otherwise, your chocolate could turn out being kind of like odd colored or have a dull sheen to it. So this is going to help that. So get all your chopped up chocolate into your container you're going to put in the microwave. Make sure you do have a microwave safe container to do this with. And like I said, you're going to do this for 20 some seconds a run. I think it probably takes almost like 1.5 to 2 minutes to melt the chocolate, but just do it in little bursts, so that way you don't overcook your chocolate and burn some of it. And as you can see, I put the coconut oil in and brought it back from the microwave, and you see it's nice and smooth and ready to use. You're going to need a toothpick or a skewer or something to dip these in with, because once you get it into the actual bourbon ball, you can take it, spin it around in there, take a spoon, put some chocolate over the top where the actual stick is going into it, tap it a few times to get some of the chocolate off. There will be some that'll hit the bottom of your wax paper when you're putting it down, and that's okay. And then we're just going to do this one after another. Now, once you sit this down and you take the stick out, you can use your spoon to have like a little bit of that chocolate on it to fill the hole that you just made with the stick. And once you get this done, you're just going to go and repeat it over and over and over until you go through each one of these things, continuing to dip it, continuing to do the thing. Now, if there's some chocolate that comes off around the edges, like a little bit of a smear as you're setting it down, or there's a little extra, you can take a knife once these are cooled down and actually cut that off, and that way it'll be fine, because it just comes right off as you're doing. As long as you have a nice sharp knife to cut the edge with, you're good. And like I said, you're going to be doing this like probably 31, 32 times until you get through the whole process. And when you're done, they're going to look something like this. And these have the best taste, and it's just this really great boozed up candy, but it's a wonderful thing to eat at the holidays. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. And if you get a chance, check out my cookbooks, which are available in bookstores worldwide. The first is all about everyday cooking. The second is all about baking. Happy holidays, everyone.